So I'm going to talk about the Zen model of awakening, and also I'll weave in the Theravada model of awakening as well. So initially, when the Buddha did the practices, mostly yogic practices of the day, he did things like the jhana practice, the Brahma Viharas practice, and others. And at the time, the Hindu view of jhana practice was if one could attain the first jhana, or excuse me, the eighth jhana, meaning one could get very steeped in the eighth jhana to the point of um, a deep experience of it, that the successive jhanas would purify the mind. The concentration practices, among them the breath awareness jhana practice and the Brahma Viharas, are all intended to purify the mind. And so the idea was, from the Hindu perspective, was that with each jhana that one successfully attained, there would be a commensurate mind purification, a loosening of identity to the me, and more orienting towards the mystery, towards what we call the absolute. And at the time, the eighth jhana was considered full enlightenment. And I understand the logic behind it. The eighth jhana is phenomenally refined, very, very subtle. And one of the things in Buddhism is the more subtle something is, the more discreet it is, typically the more potent and powerful it is. So the eighth jhana is phenomenally refined. I think I wrote about it in Practicing the Jhanas, that it's like attending to a spider web, where if you touch any of the aspects of the web, it's going to break or fall apart. That's the kind of delicacy that the eighth jhana has. And and so the Buddha did these practices. He did the eighth jhanas, but realized that they were conditioned. As long as his meditative concentration could reach the third level, again, momentary is the first level, access concentration, which is a deep concentration, not yet absorption, and then the third, absorption or complete merging into the object, the meditative object. The Buddha saw that these were conditioned states. The experience, the impact was long lasting, but the experience itself was conditioned. And so that's when he began developing the Vipassana practice, knowing, and my suspicion, this is not written anywhere, but my suspicion is that the Buddha found that from the access concentration of eighth jhana, there was a portal into what sometimes is referred to in what I call the ninth jhana, which is the absolute realm or the absolute. And so I believe the Buddha found an access point there into the absolute, getting, oh, there's a source here we can get into, we can merge with, that's really primary and also fundamental and just magnificent. But he realized that not everybody has the meditative concentration or the time to do this practice. And even today, if I do a jhana retreat, virtually everybody would be in access concentration, and no more than 10 to 25% of people would experience jhana. That's typically the numbers on a jhana retreat. And so you can see it's a smaller percentage of people that can access it. And so that's where the Buddha developed the Vipassana. The last stage is taking Nibbana as an object. Nibbana and cessation are the same. So it's accessing, opening to being absorbed into cessation. And cessation is called that because it is a complete ceasing of all mentality and all materiality, which means it's a lights out experience. There's nothing. There's no awareness. There's no consciousness. We only know that cessation has happened after it ends, when consciousness and awareness restart. If the experience has been deep enough, if it's been impactful enough, it will feel like things have changed. I'm not the same inside that I was. I had somebody I'm working with who had a very deep cessation experience quite recently in the last month. And I checked in with them recently, and they still have no sense of self at all. And the absolute is what they're referencing when they turn in. So they've had a very deep experience. This is somebody who's had a number of awakening experiences. So they're not somebody new, they're quite experienced. And anyway, so that one I end up confirming as what I call the Daigo Tettei, which is the last stage of the Zen awakenings, which is a fairly rare one. So anyway, so that's how it progressed. And the languaging of all this came about that there's a term, a gradual illumination. And that's where the jhana practice really was landed, that folks gradually were purifying the mind, moving closer and closer to complete union with the absolute, complete absorption, merger with the absolute. And that moved into the languaging of sudden illumination. And that's really where the Zen school took up that banner of Kensho, that talking about it, presenting it in a way to say, this is real, this is available right now. It's not something that's far away, and you don't need to do this extensive jhana practice, spending a month or more in retreat to have a conditioned experience that you can't maintain at home. With a deep enough Kensho, deep enough initial awakening, the consciousness is changed forever. That's why in my teaching, I emphasize Kensho and awakening so much over jhana, because the awakening experiences do alter consciousness. There is a relationship to the absolute that doesn't go away, that becomes an ongoing feed of information, of knowing can happen with that experience. And going a little further, in my presentation of awakening, so Kensho is the initial awakening, and really any awakening can be called Kensho. And then I differentiate it from a term called Satori. Some of the Zen traditions used Kensho and Satori interchangeably. I use Satori to mean a deeper, sustained Kensho. So it's longer lasting, it's more thoroughgoing, more of the attachment to the sense of self is broken in the Satori experience. And in the Satori experience, one of the end results is the absolute as true nature in my consciousness becomes the primary seat. So rather than with Kensho, the personality can still be operating actively. With the Satori, it's going to be operating less. And we don't ever believe the personality again with the Satori. Even if it functions, I'm completely in personality, I don't fully buy it. I know it's a conditioned activity of mind or habit of mind that's happening. So I'm not sucked into the belief in personality. And then finally, the third awakening, which I just mentioned, is called Daigo Tettei, which means the great awakening, the final awakening. It isn't actually the final, but it's called that because there's such a deep experience and deep merger with the absolute that then the absolute becomes the inner foundation. So when one with a Daigo Tettei realization turns inward, the absolute is there. So you can see the difference. With Kensho, it's going to be both the vastness of the absolute will be part of what the inner experience is some of the time, and sometimes will be personality. The personality is can be more believed if at that stage. With the Satori, the personality is no longer believed at all, and true nature becomes the foundation. And with the Daigo Tettei, the absolute becomes the foundation, and the sense of self is vanquished, is eliminated. So there's no sense of self anymore. There's still a functioning, there's still a working in the world, doing all the things humans do, but it's not based on a self. It's based on the functioning of the absolute.